It's now time for the Action Sci-Fi Specialist Ranking, where I rank 32 movies across 5 franchises from worst to best. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the Movie Ranker, and today I am participating in a huge ranking, the Action Sci-Fi Specialist Ranking, put on by Austin, SPC Unleashed. Go check out his channel, guys. He is hosting this big ranking where we take 32 movies across 5 franchises and rank them worst to best. We got Planet of the Apes, we got The Terminator, we got Alien, we got Predator, and we got Robocop. All 5 franchises going against each other to see who's the worst, who's the best. And like I said, I'm not alone in this ranking. It's hosted by Austin from SPC Unleashed, and we also got Jason from BACKTRACK CINEMA. Both of them putting out their own rankings the same day as mine, so go check them out. Links will be in the description of this video. I'm not going to spend too much time on these movies. I got 32 to talk about, and I've already ranked them all individually in their own franchises, so you can go check those out if you're interested. So without wasting any more time, let's dive in. So for me, coming in the dead last at number 32, I got Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Not a fan of this sequel, obviously. I think it goes in really bizarre and strange directions, being a follow-up to the original. The first half of this film feels more like a rehash of things we've already seen in the first movie, and the second half just goes really strange and bizarre, where we meet these underground humans who are mutants and who worship the bomb, and it just seems so out of place in this franchise. I also wasn't a fan of what they did to the Taylor character. I'll admit it has pretty good set pieces when we go underground and see underground New York. That looks pretty cool, and the Guerrilla Army is interesting, but yeah, this is a terrible movie if you ask me. Up next, at number 31, I got The Predator. Now, this one was directed by Shane Black, who was a part of the original Predator movie, so I had high hopes that this was going to be good. Unfortunately, it's not. I'm not a fan of the story in this one, and the story is a mess. It was hacked by the studios, and a bunch of scenes taken out in that, and you can really tell when you're watching this. Not a fan of the Mega Predator, the big one, who's all CGI. It looks terrible. Keep Predator practical. It looks better when it's a man in the suit. The characters here, we got good casting. Thomas Jane, you got Key in here from Key and Peele. Unfortunately, they treat them all like a joke. They're just a bunch of clowns. They're more focused on making their comedy stand out in this film than good action or horror. That was their big downfall. Not a fan of this movie, and one I dread going back to rewatching. Up next, at number 30, I got Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Now, this one has some interesting themes and brings up interesting questions like, what if we went back in time and killed Hitler's mom? Even though she would be innocent, we would be saving the future. Questions like that, because Zira and Cornelius is here, and they know that they're the reason why the humans fall and the apes rise, right? So they're like, maybe we should just kill them now. It brings up interesting questions like that, and we have a pretty bleak but interesting final act here. Unfortunately, it takes like an hour for things to get going. We're just following Zira and Cornelius in like courtrooms and being investigated, and it just seems like it lasts forever. It feels like it's in real time, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they went back into the past with Taylor's ship. That ship went into like a lake or a river somewhere. There's no way they would be able to get that out and figure out how to run it and everything. Just doesn't make much sense. But overall, this is just too much of a boring movie for me. Up next at number 29, I got the Robocop remake. Now, this one, you know, stylistically, it looks really slick on a technical level. It's really well made. The acting's fine in it, but the movie just feels lifeless. For one thing, it's watered down to PG-13 when this is a franchise known for its ultra violence. And yeah, they don't really add anything real interesting to the film, aside from maybe dealing with Murphy's family a bit more and the human aspect of Robocop. That's interesting enough, but everything else is just so bland. Like I said, it almost feels pointless watching this movie. It lacks any good action. There's very little action in here. And yeah, it's just not what we want from a Robocop film. Coming in at number 28, I got Robocop 3. Now, this is another mixed bag for me. I do enjoy following the Resistance crew here, although people got kicked out of their communities and they're trying to fight back against OCP. That stuff's interesting, but the movie just feels so cheap. You can tell they didn't have much of a budget here. Again, dropping down to PG-13 didn't help this film. You got interesting villains, but they're never quite fleshed out, or we don't get a real cool fight scene with them, with like the samurai robots. Interesting ideas, but they just don't really go anywhere with them. The jetpack scene, it's okay, but it's kind of teased the whole movie, and we don't get much of it at the end. It just feels cheap, this film, and I think that's its biggest problem. Coming in at number 27, I got Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Used to love this film growing up, but it did not age well for me. Not a fan. The worst version of John Connor we ever had, portrayed by Nick Stahl. Terrible casting there, and I just don't like the way he's written as this like burnout. Terrible, terrible. I do like Kate Brewster. I think her character's awesome. Our villain here is just like a female version, kind of the T-1000 with a few more tricks up her sleeve, but she's not real interesting either. And I do not like the way this movie ends. Did it go into hiding underground? I found that was so anticlimactic, even as a kid. And this is the worst version of the T-800. Arnold still brings his A game, but the way he's written more as a joke. They're always trying to bring in comedy into here. It's not serious enough. And yeah, there's a lot of problems with this movie. Again, it's a mixed bag. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but you can do so much better with the Terminator. Up next, at number 26, I got RoboCop 2. Now, this one is entertaining, I'll give it that, but comparing it to the original, it's such a big downhill drop in quality. This one's just goofy and bizarre. It takes on too many side plots. We got RoboCop kind of stalking his family. We got a group of criminals selling nuke. We got OCP taking one of those main criminals and turning him into this new RoboCop, which was the dumbest idea I've ever seen. And this guy is still addicted to the drugs as RoboCop, and it's just terrible, terrible, terrible. The whole end fight scene, all in stop motion. It just doesn't look good when you have a stop motion versus a practical person, right? It just doesn't mesh well. It makes it seem really outdated. I do appreciate that it still has that R rating. You still get quite a bit of violence in here, but on top of that, it's just so damn goofy. Up next, at number 25, I got AVP 2, Requiem. Now, this is where the movies are starting to get decent in my ranking. This one has great ideas, like having the Pred alien, and he looks great. Unfortunately, he's in the dark most of the time. Like, the whole movie, you can barely see what's going on. But yeah, the ideas in there are interesting. It does give you an R rating, a strong R rating compared to the first AVP, which is a plus. And their whole end fight is pretty cool. And I do like the Predator kind of investigating and cleaning up the mess that the Pred alien's making, trying to cover up his tracks. That's cool, but not a fan of any of these characters, and we get a lot of them. None of them are fleshed out, and I just don't like them. And yeah, it's just way too in the dark, this movie. You need to really brighten things up here. Up next, at number 24, we got Alien 3. Now, I do enjoy the setting of this one being taking place like on a prison with interesting characters like these rapists and killers and stuff. And Ripley happens to be among them. That's interesting. Also interesting that the alien took on part dog in this one. He's like a hybrid with a dog instead of a human, which gives him a little bit different of a look. And I like that they're kind of expanding on different things that he can occupy. But he looks terrible with the CGI. This is a very early 90s film, so CGI was not great back then unless you're James Cameron. Do not like how it undoes the victory of aliens killing off Hicks and Newt before the movie even starts. It kind of just ruins the ending of Aliens here. I hate that. And, Ripley does make some dumb decisions wandering around this prison with all these convicts let loose. Like, what was she thinking? But it is still one that I enjoy going back to, as ugly and bland as the cinematography is. I still enjoy following Ripley. She's still a great character. And I do kind of like the way this one ends with her sacrificing herself to save everybody, so this alien does not live on. At number 23, I got Battle for the Planet of the Apes, the last movie in the Planet Apes saga of the original saga, and this one wraps up the storyline quite nicely. Unfortunately, they didn't have the budget to show a real big crazy war or battle in here. They try to use camera tricks, like not showing how many humans are coming up to them to fight. You can tell there's really only like 15-20 people there, but they try to make it look like a grand army. But besides the point, I do like the story and how the apes have their own village here, their own teachers and everything. It reminds me a lot of the TV series that came out right after this, which I enjoyed as a kid. And I just like how we get like a civil war between the gorillas and the rest of the apes, and plus the humans coming in as well. So you got like double threats here. It makes for an interesting finale. At number 22, I got Conquest for the Planet of the Apes. Now we're getting into the 3.5-star movies for me. These are getting pretty good in my opinion. And this one, yeah, breath of fresh air in this early saga. I like how we start to see Caesar taking on the role of leader and going through the whole revolution and stuff like that. I do wish they would have fleshed that part out a little bit. It seems like we really do a speed run through his planning and everything, which is unfortunate, but I really do like the story in here, and it just makes everything make more sense. How they explain that Cornelius and Zira was carrying a virus that killed off all cats and dogs, so they turned to apes as pets, and it just really sets everything in motion even better. Of course, Matt Reeves' trilogy took some ideas from here and really developed them better, but I do really enjoy this old flick. Up next at 21, I got Planet of the Apes by Tim Burton. Now, this is probably the first hot take of my ranking. Most people would have this at the bottom. But, you know, I really enjoyed this one. It was a first-time watch for me. I really liked the costume designs and that for the apes. I think they look great. Tim Roth makes for a badass villain. He's always great. And, yeah, they're just brutal. I do enjoy that the one girl ape that's kind of like the rebel and protecting the humans. That was interesting too. And the whole way that Mark Wahlberg's character gets to this planet through like a black hole space thing with his monkey, I thought was real interesting and different from the original. Of course, they dropped the ball with the whole final twist. Do not like Abraham Lincoln. It's just confusing, honestly, because nothing adds up to that point. You have to kind of put together how that happened in your head yourself, because it's never really explained or anything. And yeah, the Mark Wahlberg is a very forgettable character in here. I usually really like him, but this is not his best role. Coming in at number 20, we got Terminator Salvation. The first movie to finally go into the future. We finally get to see the war happening, because every other movie in this franchise takes place in the past, right? Before the big war against the machines and humans. So it was interesting that we dived into that. I think Christian Bale makes for a decent John Connor, even though he's stuck in Batman mode half the time with his voice being really deep, you know. And I do enjoy Kyle Reese in here as well. It's just too bad we don't get a lot of John Connor and Kyle Reese together. I would have really liked to see them form a bond in here a little stronger. They don't get a whole lot of screen time together. But the Marcus character is really interesting. I find every time you have like a hybrid cyborg type character in here, those are the most interesting, because you don't know if they're good or bad. And Marcus not having much of a memory of what happened, he doesn't even know what's going on. So I think all that is great. The action is decent, and yeah, it's an okay little fan fiction Terminator film. Number 19, I got Terminator Dark Fate, the newest entry in the franchise, and another movie that was supposed to kick off a trilogy just like Salvation and Genesis, but none of them ever did, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm not one of those people that are super mad that they kill off John Connor at the starting of this movie. I think I would be if this movie came out right after T2, but since we had so many different versions of John Connor and so many different timelines in that it doesn't really bother me in this case. And I like the story it told because of killing off John Connor, how it created another future with Legion and everything. Again, we get another cyborg character with Grace, or she's like an advanced soldier. Again, a really interesting character here. Those are always the best. Our main lead, Danny, is incredibly forgettable. She's what brings this movie down a little bit more for me. As well as the Rev 9, I feel like he could have been a bit more villainous. You know, he is, you know, out there killing people like crazy, but I'm kind of mixed on him being split into like the T-1000 and T-800 together. They couldn't really come up with anything new, I suppose. But I do still enjoy this movie. I like Sarah Connor. I didn't think I would. I figured she'd just be a cash grab to bring people in to watch this movie, but no, they really utilize her well and how broken and distraught she is after losing John. Carl, you didn't need Arnold in this movie. I think that kind of hurt it. I don't buy a T-800 turning human, and becoming self-aware in that, even though his mission was done. It just never really worked for me. But overall, I think this movie gets way too much hate, and it's incredibly entertaining. Up next, at number 18, we're continuing with the Terminator movies. I got Terminator Genesis. Wow, this is another one that gets way too much hate in my opinion. I know the biggest problem everybody has is probably the casting and the way the characters are written. And I'm right there with you. When I first watched this, I was kind of like mixed on that aspect. But I kind of grown to love it because they changed the timeline. They went back to the past so many times that it would screw things up. You wouldn't get the same characters this time around. And you get kind of a role reversal with Sarah and John here, or Sarah and Kyle Reese, I should say, which was real interesting. And I do like how we get see pieces of the original film and all that. That's really cool to me. And John Connor being bad actually makes sense in here since Genesis, Skynet, whatever you want to call it at this point, infected him. And interesting, he was humanity's last hope. Now he's the machine's last hope, and I like that little twist on the story. Again, unfortunately, we never got to see the sequels to this, so there's some things that we never really got revealed, like how the Terminator went back into the 70s at one time when Sarah was just a kid and stuff like that. I would have really liked to see how that all happened, but unfortunately that's never going to happen. But I still have a pretty damn good time with this flick. At number 17, we got Predators. Now, this is an interesting flick where they take a bunch of convicts, a bunch of elite soldiers and whatnot, and drop them on this random planet to be hunted by the Predators. Really interesting concept, and that's what really sucks me in every time I'm watching this. We got a pretty great cast, even though I think Adrian Brody should have not been our main lead. He tries to act like Arnold in that, but he just doesn't give off that persona. He doesn't really seem like that type of tough guy. He would have worked better as a side character, I believe, but nonetheless, he's still decent in here. I love Lawrence Fishburne's character in the spaceship and how he's gone loony and gone crazy from living on this planet so many years. And seeing all the different versions of the Predator is pretty cool as well. I just always find that by the final act, I find like they don't really know where to go with this story. It's interesting up until that point. I do like the little twist with Topher Grace's character, from that 70s show, Eric, how he is really like a mad doctor. And, on rewatch, you should kind of figure that out since everybody else in this movie are terrible people except for him, So by the end, you're like, oh, that makes much more sense. Overall, a pretty good Predator movie. Not my favorite, but I still have a fun time watching it. At number 16, we got Alien Resurrection. This one was written by Joss Whedon, so you really see that with their characters, the group of characters. He's pretty good at doing that aside from Justice League. And yeah, I just enjoy how wacky and goofy it is. The tone is kind of all over the place. Sometimes they're serious, sometimes it's bizarre, and sometimes it's funny. But most of the time, it works. I enjoy Ripley as a clone in this one. Not as good, obviously, as when she was alive. But I think it was a clever way to bring her back into the franchise. And to also bring the aliens back. The group of smugglers in here are all fun to watch. Winona Ryder, Ron Perlman. I think the biggest negative here is the whole ending with the weird ass alien human hybrid with the white goo all over him. That he looks terrible, and we get some weird sexual innuendos with Ripley and the aliens, since she has alien DNA in her. Very weird stuff. I think if they would have fixed that ending a little bit more, much more people would appreciate this. But I think it's a fun film. We get some great action pieces, like the aliens swimming after them in the water. CGI looks pretty great for the late 90s, and I have fun going through this movie every time. At number 15, I got The First AVP by Paul W.S. Anderson. I really like the mythology and the storyline in this one with this underground pyramid, or under ice, I should say, and how it's like shape-shifting and turning while people are in them, make them lost in this maze, and how they have the whole sacrificial room for the aliens. And this is all used for the Predators to hunt down the aliens. Very clever. Unfortunately, it is PG-13, so we don't get the gore and the violence that I would have liked. When you see the alien and predators fight, it's pretty good since they use green blood. They're able to do that with PG-13, but you don't get a whole bunch of carnage on the humans. But I do enjoy our main lead human having to team up with the Predator, take out the rest of these aliens and to take out the Queen alien. It's just a bunch of fun. Definitely seen as fan fiction, like most of these alien movies. There's really only two that hold up the test of time with its storylines and that feel like a part of the main story, where everything else in the Alien franchise kind of feels like fan fiction. Reaching our 14th spot and making my way into my 4-star type movies is Prometheus. This is an interesting story. It deals with so many themes like creation, destruction, where did we come from? There's just so much to unravel here, and they do it in a really unique and clever way. I like the whole David character, how he was created by humans, but then he sees himself as superior and goes on his own kind of creative mission, if you will, and to become godlike. I think it's a beautiful film. Ridley Scott really knows how to film a movie. It looks great. The cinematography is on point. I feel like the movie works best if you take it as just as a sci-fi movie. If you start taking it as a horror movie or an alien movie, it may not work for you because we don't get a whole lot of that in here. This is really a very far back prequel to the Alien movies. But like I said, you take it on its own, it works a lot better. Or once Covenant came out, I felt like it made this movie much more stronger as well. The only thing holding this one back is the dumb character decisions, like wandering around on a planet you don't even know, touching shit, dealing with weird creatures, running straight ahead when a spaceship is about to fall down on you when you could have just ran to the sides. Dumb character decisions. But aside from that, really fun movie. And I didn't mention this in my alien ranking, but the scene where our main lead has to take the alien creature out of her stomach with give herself basically an abortion or like a C-section. That is insane. I love that scene. And the perfect pair to Prometheus, coming in at 13, I have Alien Covenant. Now this one kind of gives you the best of both worlds. We still get a lot of that Prometheus stuff, but they finally add in enough alien stuff in here to really balance things out. It feels like an alien movie. I love that David kind of goes off the rails and begins experimenting like crazy, basically creating the evolution of the alien, creating the egg and everything. All that stuff is super interesting. And all of David and Walter's conversation, the two AI here, are all real interesting as well, since they come from different places. They're different versions of this AI, and they have different regulations and stuff. While David is kind of trying to make Walter see the world in a different way. And the whole twist of how they switch at the end was just brilliant the first time I seen it. The alien action's good. It's gory. It's brutal. Unfortunately, the CGI sticks out a little bit. It's good CGI, but they always look better when they're practically done. I can't say that enough. But yeah, this is a great movie, and it's just unfortunate we never got that third movie to really round out this trilogy and make the story lead up to the original 1979 classic. Coming in at number 12, I got the original Planet of the Apes. What a great sci-fi flick from the 60s, really ahead of its time in my opinion. We take the twist for granted nowadays, like everybody knows that this was taking place on Earth, but I imagine being in theater watching this when it first came out, your mind must have been blown by the end. And it does a really good job at tackling its themes and messages, whether you're talking about animal cruelty, society, and different levels of society, and everybody being separated and stuff like that. There's just so much here to unpack. We got great characters. I love the Taylor character. And while you can tell that these aren't real monkeys, obviously, they're just people in suits, the story is just so good that 10 minutes into this film, you believe that these are real monkeys in your head. You kind of forget about the suits and that you're like, they're just so believable, in my opinion, especially for the 60s, that it's such a great job in that aspect. And this is a great movie that I think definitely holds up. At number 11, I got Predator 2. What a fun sequel that goes from the jungle to the concrete jungle. We're in the city this time with Predator. He's taking out mobsters and gangsters and stuff like that. Police officers getting in his way. And yeah, it's just a really cool twist on the whole original film. We don't got all these macho guys either. We got Danny Glover as a hard-headed, loudmouth cop, and he's real fun to watch. And all of his partners like Bill Paxton and all that are fun too. Gary Busey is hilarious in this film as a scientist trying to research and capture the Predator. And all the Predator's new gadgets are real cool too, with his spear and his little spin disc thing. Everything is just cool that they added in here. May not be as cleverly written as the first movie, or not move as good in pacing wise, but I think it's just a really fun entry in the Predator franchise that has a kick-ass finale where Danny Glover's character goes into the spaceship, fights on the Predator, kills him, and gets greeted by all the other Predators. And it's the first time you get to see all the different versions of them, the different subspecies of them. Really cool, and yeah, how he gets that gun at the end, you're like, huh, they've been here before. Just a great sequel, in my opinion. We made it into the top 10, and at number 10, I have the original Robocop. Another movie that's ahead of its time when you're talking about its themes and that, like, about privatizing our public sectors and how that should never be done. It's never going to benefit the people because they do not have the people's greatest interests in mind. Or whether you're talking about creating cyborgs to replace humans, like an AI and stuff like that. It just was way ahead of its time for the 80s, and I think that a lot of its themes resonate with us even more in today's modern age. But the cherry on top is how ultra violent this movie is. You're seeing limbs being blown off, you're seeing people's faces melted with acid. It's all practical, it's all kick ass, it looks so great, it's so gritty, and that's something that all the sequels kind of lack. Of course, a younger audience member watching this might find it a bit outdated with the way RoboCop moves and a little bit of the stop motion near the end. But if you're like me and have been watching this movie since you were younger, that stuff doesn't really bother me one bit. I think it's a classic for good reason, and it definitely holds up in my opinion. At number 9, I got War of the Planet of the Apes, the final movie in the Matt Reeves trilogy. I'm so happy we're going to be getting a new one, though, called Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Really excited for that. But this one, War of the Planet of the Apes, it really concludes the Caesar storyline brilliantly. It mirrors the Holocaust a little bit in the way the apes are treated and enclosed in the fenced areas, and that we had a great villain here with Woody Harrelson, and you really see where he comes from. And how they bring up the virus that makes people mute and kind of dumb in this movie. I'm like, man, that's so interesting. Definitely a callback to the original film, how the humans couldn't talk and stuff like that. So yeah, you really see where this villain is coming from, but you also see Caesar's side of things with his family getting murdered and stuff. So it's just real interesting to see these two come head to head, and also have Caesar, bring on this little girl, a human girl, and him protecting her. And, he questions his own values at one point because he's so mad at the humans. He sees her as a threat and should be killed off too at the first, but he warms up to her and he starts to get his values and his moral code back, as you will, as the movie progresses. And like I said, it's just a great way to wrap up this trilogy. At number 8, I got Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. This is the fan favorite in this franchise. I feel like most people have it as number 1, and for good reason. It's a kick-ass movie. You get some great action between the humans and the apes, and not only that, you kind of got internal battles on both sides. You got humans fighting with the humans and apes fighting with the apes, especially Koba. It makes for a real interesting character because you see where he's coming from. You understand after all the experiments and torture he went through by the humans, you see why he doesn't trust them one bit, and he feels like Caesar is putting them all in danger. And that is such an interesting side to this story. And when you see monkeys run around with AK-47s shooting them like gangsters, it is just so fun, so cool to watch. And the whole end battle between Caesar and Koba does really hit hard. I think it's really fun and just really engaging to watch. Just a great chapter in the Apes trilogy. At number 7, I got the brand new Prey, the newest movie in the Predator franchise, and this one really put the franchise back on track. They went back to the basics. A predator hunting a group of people. That's all we really want. And this one does it so well. We got the Comanche tribe. You would think that they would be really out of their league against the Predator, but this version of the Predator, this feral Predator, has a lot more not as sophisticated weapons, I would say. Like, he has like a metal shield and stuff, but it's all still really cool. He has this net that like closes and kills people, and I love how he doesn't really know who's at the top of the food chain when he first lands on Earth. He has to go through snakes and wolves and bears before he finally reaches the top of the food chain, being the humans. And you throw in the French in there at the same time, fighting off the Indians, and that it just makes for a really interesting story. I love Naru, great badass final girl with her dog as a partner. There's so much fun to watch. My only little nitpick I have with this movie, that would keep it from being a masterpiece in my mind is the way they take out the Predator. I mean, he never learned his lesson. Halfway through the movie, he loses his helmet, and that almost gets him killed. He can't shoot without his helmet because his helmet is the aimer, right? And at the end, he loses his helmet again. It's pointed straight at him, and stupid him, he still fires and kills himself, basically. Besides that small little part in the movie, this movie is flawless to me. I love it. I know I'm one of the only people to say it's basically flawless, but that's just the way I feel. I've seen it already 7 or 8 times since its release, and yeah, it's just a great movie that's far exceeded my expectations when I went to watch it. Up next at number 6, I got Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I know I'm in the minority for having this as the best Planet of the Apes movie, but I've always liked this movie. This is the one I watched the most. It's just so friggin' good. I'm a sucker for origin stories, and I feel like this one does it best, man. Does it perfectly, in my opinion. They really make you root for Caesar and the apes in this. You want all the humans to die. That's how good of writing it is for the apes in here. It really puts you on Caesar's side, really. But I think Franco is a great human character in here. He doesn't get enough credit in this film. I think he's great. From the scenes where Caesar's put into that ape enclosure to them figuring out how to break out and giving all the other monkeys the serum to make them super smart and green-eyed to take on the world, you know. From that all the way to where they're going across the bridge, heading to the woods, it's just so epic. My jaws dropped every time I'm watching this film. And when they kill off the gorilla, it does almost bring a tear to your eye. That's how great these characters are written. Yes, there is minor, the visuals doesn't look as great as the other Apes movies. They still look decent, but obviously not as good as Dawn or Ward. The graphics weren't quite there yet, but once those sequels came along, I'm sure they had a bigger budget to make that better. But that doesn't bother me at all because the story is just so good. And yeah, hail Caesar. Now, reaching our top 5. These are the heavy hitters, guys. There's no right or wrong way to place these movies. So for me, at number 5, I have Aliens. James Cameron really upped the ante with this one. He took what the original Alien did, and he makes it this action-packed movie with the military going in to fight off multiple aliens, which is really cool. I like how he expands on the mythology and the lore, you know, making the queen. We finally get to see where the eggs come from. You love watching Ripley, you know, having to go back in after her not wanting to, but end up becoming the biggest badass out of all those Marines. And her protecting Newt is just so fun to watch, and her seeing that mother-daughter bond there, which kind of mirrors the bond between the Queen and the aliens themselves. The whole final battle with Ripley versus the alien is just epic, with her in that forklift machine. So cool. And all the cast is friggin' amazing. We get Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, Sigourney Weaver, Lance Henriksen. The cast is stunning, man. It's just so good. And the characters themselves are also written brilliantly, especially them putting in another AI in here. You're never sure whether you should trust them or not. That's one thing the Alien movies always provide. Just a great kick-ass sequel that I'm sure most people would have above the original. Up next at number 4 is the original Alien. Like I said, most people would have Aliens above Alien, but not me. I love both those movies, don't get me wrong, but this one is just masterful. I love how claustrophobic the spaceship feels. We only get one alien, but it's deadly, and it goes around like a slasher, picking off all these people one by one. It's terrifying. You're really behind Ripley the whole way. She's the voice of reason here. And it's funny that she's not even like a main character at first. We're not sure who is the main one, which makes the mystery much more greater on who will survive. Just the alien creature itself, so brilliant. From its looks to its evolutionary stages, from egg to little creature that goes on your face to, you know, chest burster to this big ass alien with acid blood and 2 mouths. It's just genius. One of the best creature creations ever, up there with Predator. They're both neck and neck for my favorite creature designs of all time. And yeah, this film is claustrophobic. It's full of tension. It may move slower. A lot of people may say it's too slow paced, but I think that adds to the tension, moving down the corridor slowly and that. And yeah, this is just a kick-ass film that looks beautiful on Blu-ray. Reaching our top 3. At number 3, I have Predator, the original. We're in the 10 out of 10 territory now. This is just so frigging rewatchable, so frigging good. Body Mass alone, one of the best movies ever made. Freaking Carl Weathers, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura, all these huge ass boys, and they're against the Predator who's taking them out like nothing, which makes you think like these are supposed to be the best of the best, but this hunter is even better. Brilliant. And I love how he's hunting them the whole movie, but by the final act, Arnold's character Dutch has to turn the tide and start basically using his tricks against him, hunting him, becoming invisible with the mud and doing all these traps and whatnot. Makes for a badass finale, especially when they both face off without their weapons, just hand to hand. It's really cool. And like I said, the Predator look is freaking so unique. How you got like the two teeth things, fangs coming out here. It's freaky as hell the first time I seen it as a kid. Definitely nightmare fuel right there. I just love how it blends action and horror so seamlessly. As you're watching this movie, you think it's a straight up action movie, but as the runtime passes, it slowly starts turning into a horror movie, kind of in a style, kind of like a slasher, where he's picking them off one by one, skinning them, and it's pretty brutal, but I love it for that. And yeah, this movie is just endlessly rewatchable. I could rewatch it 10, 20 times a year and never get bored of it, especially that iconic score. I gotta mention the score. It pairs with the jungle scenes so well. And like, I don't know, it just feels foreign, just like the Alien. And yeah, love this movie, always have, and it's easily in my top 3. Up next at number 2, I have Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Most people have this one above the original Terminator, but if you've been following me, I don't. But I do love this movie. It is the best sequel ever made, in my opinion. James Cameron, again, takes everything from the original and ups the ante, makes the action sequences bigger, the character moments big. Everything is so amazing. The T-1000, probably the best villain of all time. He's up there anyway. And how do you stop liquid metal, you know? It's just so clever in its writing, especially how they do stop it near the end with the lava, but first freezing it and that failing. And it's you kind of get a couple endings there that keep kind of throwing you off, and I love that. I love how the T-800 in this one forms a bond with John Connor and it basically becomes like his father figure, while John teaches it a bunch of slang and limbo to become more human, you know, and tell him not to kill anybody. I'm pretty sure he doesn't kill a single person in this film, which is really impressive. And of course, Sarah Connor comes back as one of the most badass women in cinema. She is like a soldier in this one, which I absolutely love the way they written her, but she's still psychologically broken at times. She's still human, you know? Yeah, just great action overall. You get the really interesting flip from making Arnold from a bad guy to a good guy in here, but it works, man. Who would have thought on paper that would work? And yeah, it's just really thrilling. Got great action sequences. They remove a tiny bit of the horror elements, but they replace it with comedy, and somehow that works as well too. Normally, I don't like comedy in these type of films, but they don't overdo it, and when it's done right, it just works. So T2, my number 2 out of this ranking, and one of my favorite movies of all time. But finally making it to my number 1 movie of this ranking, and one of my favorite movies of all time, we have the original, The Terminator. James Cameron, this was apparently created due to a nightmare he had. He woke up and started writing this script, and it is just brilliant. It's a genre blender for sure, adding in action, horror, sci-fi, and mixing them all seamlessly. I'm a big fan of time travel, so that's another bonus this movie gives me, and the story in this one could be taken as its own movie with no sequels, and it will have that perfect time loop. I love how they don't need to hit you over the head with explaining what's going on in that. They kind of just throw you in, and they have Michael Biehn's character, Kyle Reese, explain things while the action's still happening. While he's driving, trying to get away, he's explaining to Sarah what's going on, and he is just so believable in his monologue. One of my favorite things about this movie is actually the romance and drama between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. It's so believable. They just met in each other, but through the runtime, you really feel the relationship blossom to, you know, and once you figure out that Kyle is actually the father of John, it's just mind-blowing to me. You got a brilliant musical score. You got Arnold playing the T-800, and one of his best roles ever. Of course, he just had to be machine-like, but Arnold isn't the most charismatic actor to begin with, so this was almost the perfect role for him, and he does nail down the movements and everything. Sure, people could say there's some outdated scenes in here, like when he's working on his eye and you can tell it's a fake head, or the stop motion when he comes out of the fire as the exoskeleton. Yeah, but again, I've been watching these movies my whole life, so that stuff does not bother me one bit. I think it still looks great, and the ending when you're in the factory and Sarah has to become the soldier when Kyle's gone, it's just so badass. A great final act, if you ask me. And this is my third favorite movie of all time, so it easily ranked number one in this list. It's one I've watched my whole life, along with T2. Like I said, I'm in the minority of having this one first, but for me, this is just the better story. It just has great, interesting characters. The T-800 is ferocious, maybe not as good of a villain as the T-1000, but the T-800 had a walk before the T-1000 could run. And to me, this easily comes first place in my ranking. So there you have it, guys. Woo, finally made it through that. 32 movies from 5 franchises, ranked from worst to best. I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely gonna have people disagreeing with my list, but that is my list. I have to stay true to myself. That's how I feel. The top 10 movies, even the top 15 movies in this list are solid, super good movies. We get some stinkers at the bottom, but that's bound to happen with this many films. You can also follow me on Letterboxd, guys, if you're interested. And that's it for this video. Whew, it was a big one, but we finally made it through it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you guys rank all 32 movies, or just let me know maybe your 5 favorite from the franchise if you don't feel like typing out everything. I'd love to hear it. Love to see how different we all are in our opinions. There is not going to be 2 people with the same list. That's guaranteed right now. I'm going to tell you, I'd bet $1 million on it, because there's just so much variety in here and so many classics mixed with duds. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and that's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, thanks for watching.